everybody, to a brand new idea that came from one of our executive board members, longtime member of the Economic Alliance, Steve Cote, and it is called Owner Origins. We're going to talk a little bit about men and women who own companies in this region and what makes them different, what makes them tick, what makes them grow their companies, how they affect the economy. Beautiful thought. A lot of interesting conversation. And Steve, I think it came out of some of your conversations with our recent annual banquet. Yes, special guest speaker, Russell Ybarra, who owns one of the most successful Mexican food restaurants kind of in the whole greater Houston area, really across Texas.
Yeah.
But we want to get into that. This is really a prep show just to kind of lay the groundwork for those conversations. And Steve and I thought that we'd get together and really kind of hash it out and kind of talk through what that conversation is going to look like. And then, more importantly, I think Steve is going to be able to have some really interesting one-on-one conversations with folks that own their own companies to dive into the mindset of an owner, what drives them, and what makes them successful. So, Steve, great idea. I'm excited to kind of be your partner in crime here, at least for the kickoff show, and kind of set the groundwork on what this means. So why don't you walk us through a little bit of your thoughts of what you're thinking about here?
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, it was really neat because it came up, a couple of weeks before the event, and I don't know if you said if it was just an idea or you just thought, I ought to do it, and you ended up missing anyways. You were sick anyways, but either way, you asked me to lead the fireside chat with Russell Ybarra, and so I thought to myself, I said, okay, that sounds good. Never done that before. And so he and I met up, we visited a little bit and had some ideas of what we want to talk about. But what was really interesting about it, getting into it, because he has a similar story. He grew up in a family-owned business. I grew up in a family-owned business. He owns his own business now. I'm a partner I'm a business owner as well. And so, but we spent 45 minutes on stage talking about a lot of different things. From his book too, Enchilada Entrepreneur was really a really great book. And, but I had 10, 15 other questions I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
There were so many different things I wanted to dive into in terms of, all right, you grew up in a family-owned business, and you started your own business, and you can see the correlation there in your upbringing maybe, but you know what? Your dad didn't grow up in a family-owned business, but yet he started his own business. And it reflected on me and my dad, because my dad grew up and moved a long ways away, but always knew he wanted to start his own business or, manage and things like that. And so, and then it prompted a conversation the next morning. I was having breakfast with my parents. I'm like I had all these questions for Russell that I couldn't get to because we ran out of time. And so I sat there and I was sitting down with my mom and dad, and I'm like, all right, Dad, so yeah, what was it that you were was driving the fact that you just knew or thought that you needed to run your own business, and he'd worked in plants and factories and different things like that. And so we started chatting, talking about that. And next thing you know, that just led to a further conversation with you, further conversation with Jason Lee, who, leads a podcast here. And so, and then got to thinking about it and thought, it might be a neat thing to try.
Well, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I think you're touching on something, and it might really be kind of the heart of the conversation that you have with the business owners is there's something inside that's different about people who start their own businesses, right?
I agree 100%. I mean, the saying is they're cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
And it was actually at the event, I researched a statistic, and it was basically, just over 6% of the U.S. population owns an established business.
Yeah.
Owns an established business. So that means over 93% do not. And so when you start reflecting and thinking about that saying, it's like you are inherently different. And then, then as you go into the daily lives and the upbringing, and that's what I told Russell when we were there. I go, look, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming out here. I go, look, there's a lot of community leaders here at the Alliance. And there's a lot of people that own their own business already here in the audience right here, right now. there's a lot of aspiring, up and coming people that are going, they're looking at your book, they're listening to you, and they're like going, yeah, when did it click? When did you decide to make it? Or what's the constant drive and the urge that's eating at you because you're not doing it? And you always see so many different scenarios where everybody's planning out all these things and they're doing it. And it's like, in so many stories though, they're just like, when you finally hear this super thing, they just go, yeah, I just walked into the bank, or I knew last time bought this piece of equipment and then started going, and and you're like, oh, but that was it.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic to dive into, because there's, there are people out there that are in that 6 or 7%, right?
Yeah,
and they may have that spark inside them that says, hey, I need to own my own business. I've got an idea, or I need to do this. But then what's the trigger?
Yeah,
flips it, and then you can learn from that when talking to people like Russell, people like some of our guests that you're going to have, Ryan Taylor, those types of folks that are like, hey, I knew that I needed to be in business. What was that origin story, right?
Yeah.
To the name of the podcast. What was the one trigger that finally said, okay, no, you know what? I'm gonna start. It may be small, but I'm fixing to, I'm gonna go get that truck, or I'm gonna go rent that, or I'm gonna buy this and sell this as this person, and all of a sudden the business begins to form. What was that origin? What was that key? How can we make that more obvious to people? Right?
Yeah. Well, and then what about the scenarios where, somebody's done 2 or 3 different businesses? How does that not deter you to not say, gosh, how much money have I lost, and how much in debt am I? And yet they still strive to go through. I remember Mattress Mac, when I was at University of Houston, we had an initiative, and we got him as a speaker. I was in our marketing group, and he came in as a speaker, and he has one of those amazing stories where it's like failed, and then finally, and for him, I mean, he hit it with timing. He hit it right in the 80s, when a lot of people were starting to come to Houston, which is right about the time my dad came down, and so it was an amazing dynamic with the business model he had at that very moment and what was happening in the economy. I mean, it's just like when you read Good to Great.
Yeah.
I love that book, because when you read Good to Great, it takes out all the factors of why these companies, now in those cases, it's just companies already established and how they got, even better, but you're peeling away, okay, we're, a rising economy, or the dynamic, certain things occurred. It's like, what did you do as a process? And, so it's a good book to read as a business owner to say, okay, what did these companies do to go from, good to great? And no different than when you correlate that with owners.
Exactly. No, and a lot of that brings to mind the book Outliers,
Yeah,
right? Which is all about timing,
absolutely.
right? When you've got some of the richest people, most successful people in the history of the world, all conglomerated within one country in one decade, and that was the USA.
Yeah.
Prior to kind of the entire industrial revolution and the move west, the Western expansion across the USA. So timing is important.
Absolutely.
You were talking about the different. A lot of people will, if they are born business owners, they may fail a couple of times, but they go right back at it. And I've had some great conversations with some of our members in some of these mid-sized companies that service our industry in one way or another, and you get to pick the brain of those owners with that drive,
Yeah.
and just to see how. I can't wait to hear from a lot of them, and I've got ideas right now of several folks that we need to put in front of you and let you have that conversation with. But I go back to one of our members who owns he's owned several companies, now owns a pipe bending, metal bending fabrication company here in Pasadena.
Yeah.
And just to hear the story of how he was doing this business, and then he sold that business and found an opportunity in something that he had no experience whatsoever, but he knew how to run a business. He knew how to create a culture.
Yeah.
He knew how to drive kind of growth. Fascinating, right? And he could apply that to almost any industry sector, and to see how successful he is now, and how he's servicing not only the petrochemical industry, the aerospace industry, the large construction industry. It's those types of people that just have a different drive to them, it seems like.
Well,
I think that's what I want to hear you.
well, and it's interesting too, because in my line of work, all the different business owners I work with, there's like a caveat of what, and so I call it unique ability some of these business owners have, and we lay it out as a strategic risk, and we emphasize to them that, you need to spend 80% of your time with maximize your unique ability to give us biggest return for your company.
Yep.
But the first thing is identifying unique ability. And so, yeah, some business owners come in and they have the finance dialed down.
Yeah.
So then there's kind of similarities of what you're talking about with this other guy. He can probably go to any industry.
Yeah.
Get an understanding of that, and then dial down all the finances and tune that in right. But then you still need somebody that knows maybe the marketplace and the industry and can sell and knows where to position and everything like that. But, a lot of times you can hire that. So he can go start this or take over a business. He's got the right salesperson or and so there's like an internal component, somebody to manage the office and the employees, because that's a big expense and everything. Then there's somebody that understands the industry and can put themselves in a position to sell the product, but then the financing. And I've always found out of those three things, no one person can do all three by themselves. Usually one person can do two of those things and then they need another person, so I've worked with a lot of companies with their brothers or their husband and wife or their family owned, father and son, mother, daughter, father, daughter, things like that. And so, but it is though. And so that's what you want to get into, because that's, you as people are listening, they're like going, well, I know I've got this skill. I know I want to do this. And I got this burning desire.
Yep.
How did this person do it?
Yeah. Yep. How can I take that kind of that internal skill that I've got and apply it to a business and make it successful, and then put around me the people that can kind of fill the puzzle up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see all these different groups and things for peers and help people at different levels. And I always think about, as a business owner or somebody, an aspiring business owner, and I like the organization we both participate in for Impact with the Pasadena Chamber and everything. I think, I love seeing those young aspiring people, not sure, they're, but they just know they want to grow. They know they want to get involved in, whether it's starting with a business or grow, whatever the case may be, but it's really fun to, and for me, so, like my dad's story is really interesting. He, I was born, he was born as well in Bristol, Connecticut, home of ESPN and all that kind of stuff, and 60,000 person population just west of Hartford, Connecticut. Nice area and everything like that, but and very automotive driven, so a lot of automotive factories and things like that. And that's his entire family, all lives there, all works in the automotive industry. My grandfather worked in the automotive industry. I mean, everybody's just plugged in there. And my dad just, said, he said, I remember, that was part of the breakfast the next morning after meeting with Russell was, he just said, I worked in these factories and everything was tenured. And he goes, and I would be dealing with a manager or somebody that was the only reason why they were my boss was because they'd been there for 25 years, or whatever the cap may be. And he goes, and they're idiots. He would get so frustrated. My dad's pretty blunt. And so you just said, and everywhere I looked locally, around the area, there was no opportunity. It was, and so this is late 70s. This is Connecticut. And so he started looking to Texas, and he actually went to Austin first. And a lot of people down there said, no, the place to go is Houston. That's where all the opportunity is. So he goes back, and then he comes down to Houston, and he finds two companies that will give him an opportunity. He's like 40 years old. So back then, that's even pretty old. Well, going, why do we want to hire you? But he's looking for management opportunities. Convenience store and donut shop. And so he goes with the donut shop, and so, and I remember, here's a guy, I'm sitting here, I'm like 8 years old, and we're uprooting everything. We're suddenly packing up everything, and we're moving to Texas. We're leaving all of our family, all of my friends, all of my dad's friends, and my mom and everything. And so you're just like, okay, and then you come down to Texas, 8 years old, you're like, donuts are great, but it's like, you don't understand. And my dad's working 80 hours a week, but he's managing. Then he gets an opportunity to franchise. And then eventually that organization is, selling out and everything. And he gets an opportunity to buy. He's got to jump through hoops to get a loan and everything. And, he's at one point, I remember he was paying the mortgage with a credit card because he knew how much we liked having a home. And my mom and dad, later on you hear about that and you're just like, wow, what a sacrifice, but then compounding all the fact of just moving away and just, so that's what I was asking him. I was like, what drove you? And that he just said, I don't know. I just knew that, just working, in a redundant, factory or doing whatever. And not that anything's wrong with any of that, but it's just that, he had a tick. He had something pushing him.
Well, and I think you were dancing around it. He had the idea in his head that, hey, I can do something better than this and work for myself, right? I can put myself in a position where my hard work pays off for me rather than just being a cog in a wheel, right?
And I don't even know if he's that strategic and that visionary. And two, the emphasis also is that not that anything better or what he was doing was a bad thing. It's just he had a drive that said, I'm not settled.
Yeah.
This doesn't fit for me. This doesn't work for me. I need to.
Well, it reminds me of, and this is another guest. So now I'm thinking of guests.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of guests.
There's, Matt from over at the pipe bending company.
Yeah.
A mutual friend of ours, Danny Earp.
Oh, Danny Earp. Absolutely.
So what a story. Danny worked for a contractor in the petrochemical plant for years and learned his skill and everything. But then, and I had spoke with Danny before, and at one point he said, I just knew that I could do this better than the guys that were that we were buying stuff from. And so he said, so he just went out and started his own business, and then he bought a business, then he bought another business, started another business. I think he's got 4 or 5 businesses now, all tremendously successful.
Yeah,
all started with, hey, I'm a piece of the puzzle, right? I'm out here working, but I see there's an opportunity for me to do this better than the other guys.
Yep.
And I think not everybody kind of thinks like that. Some people are just like, hey, I'm down, I've got my head down, I'm working hard, I'm doing good.
Exactly.
But then some people are like, you know what? I can do a better job than that. There's an opportunity there. And I want to take the risk to go get it,
Yeah, and that's the other interesting thing is, how do you have the wiring, to be willing to take the risk? Again, going back to my dad, why would you want to move away? Well, you've got a safe space, comfort, family support around you. When we had gatherings, me growing up in Texas, gatherings was just our family. You, for example, I go hang out with your family and everything. I love all the family you have around. Well, that's what I had when I was in Connecticut.
And when to just pull up and move.
Yeah, right. It's a challenging thing, and so, but it's like, but what is it about that you do look up, and you do have this unsettlement. You're not settled in what it is you're doing, and you're willing to take on risk that, you sign a loan or you take a personal guarantee or you pull yourself away from family more than normal because you're getting away from just the 8-hour or 410s or whatever it can be. And you're willing to put yourself out there. And it's just interesting too, because I work with so many of them and they don't even think nothing of it. The burden that is on, and then when you start to grow, and you got 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 families. You don't even look at them as employees anymore. Mm-hmm. Now you're providing for families. And so, but it's like failure doesn't even enter into the realm. It's just a constant moving forward. Oh, we got this problem. Okay, just throw it on my back. Boom, we got this, we got that, you're just, grinding and moving forward. And, and I've always hated the stigma that I've heard from time to time with people where they talk about, you're the owner, you're wealthy, it's like, oh man,
you have this responsibility, all those employees
and
families,
and you don't even know what the barrier entry was like, and
when it's 24/7.
Yeah.
If you own your own business, and I've talked to enough company or business owners, it's you take it home with you. It's not like you can hang it up at the door at the office and go home and leave. It's 24/7.
Yeah.
Your mind, your energy is constantly concerned with and focused on, how do I continue to succeed and how do I make this successful?
Yeah, lots of sleepless nights and you're getting problems without even asking. So all you're looking for is solutions.
Yeah.
You're not bringing me a solution. I don't need that. I don't need more problems through that capacity. So yeah, it's a really interesting and amazing dynamic and there's so many different stories from so many different owners that I just, that whole scenario with the fireside chat and then a conversation with my dad the next morning, and just again, I tell a lot of kids too, I go, it's amazing as you get older in life and you start to reflect, and especially me, we're both in our 50s. So we're kind of at that midpoint. We're fortunate. Both our parents are still alive and thank them, but they're old.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that. And then you look at our kids just starting their adult lives and you're just like, okay. And so you start to think to yourself, all those times I really forced things to happen and I, pulled this out of this and did this to do that and called in favors and it still didn't really work out or anything like that. But then there's other times where you go, yeah, I'm just working away and all of a sudden this opportunity presents itself. And so I started saying, look, I'm open to it. I look at it. It takes me here, it takes me there and everything. And it's like, that's kind of how I looked at this. I was just kind of like, I never thought or wanted to even indulge into doing a podcast. I think Jason Lee does a fantastic job with the one we have here and everything. But it was that brought up, hey, do you do the fireside? Sure. And then visiting with Russell and his story. And like I said, I want to talk further with him and then having a conversation with my dad. And we got a studio. We got the availability. And we quickly, you and I started making a list of everybody. You're like, oh, this is a natural.
Well, I think it's a fascinating topic with some really unique learnings that I think you'll find. I think you're going to pull out some key personalities, some traits in people, everything from work ethic to collaboration to timing to networking, the ability to, I always say you're probably the best networker I've ever met, right?
Yeah.
It's all of these things that I think you're going to be able to pull out in these conversations with business owners that can you're transferring that information and that value out to an audience that I think a lot of people are interested to know the secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
And in the end, sometimes the secret sauce is I just made up my mind to go do it and take the risk to jump, and they, an executed plan is better than the perfect plan you just you work on forever, right? So it's going to be some interesting conversations. Like I said, just sitting here with you in our conversations before, I mean, I can think of a half a dozen business owners that I'm thinking, okay, you really got to get in front of Steve and let's dive into what was in your mind?
What was your story?
Yeah. How did you make that happen? What was the driving force? What's the lesson you would tell somebody else as they want to get into it? Everybody from, you talked about the Pasadena Impact Leadership Program. My current mentee that I'm getting to know, small, young man, young family, small business, but just you can, sat down with him a couple of times, and he just has this fire in his eyes about wanting to serve and to give back and to really kind of build up his community. Well, he's doing that through his business, right? Yeah. And so I just think those are going to be fascinating conversations. I'm excited about this. Looking forward to hearing the conversations and all the information that you can pull out with these owners.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Hopefully people will find a benefit and learn from it and get something out of it and be able to apply it.
Well, and I'll reiterate, you as a host is going to be fantastic. There was a reason I picked you to interview Russell. You're one of the best networkers that I've ever seen. You're the connector. We always go back to your speech as as chairman of the Economic Alliance, we are the connectors. Well, really, Steve Cote is the connector of people. So you got a great host here to really kind of pull this information out of these owners. So again, it's going to be owner origins, right? It's the origin stories of successful business people. So looking forward to it, and can't wait to hear it. So, and we'll see it out on the podcast. We'll be blasting it out to all our people, and hope that everybody will share it with their friends and connections.
It's awesome. Thank you.
All right.